So there was discussions on Capitol Hill about concerns about anti-Semitism at college.
Yes.
And what can you share from your point of view, and what do you flag as that is truly anti-Semitic that really concerns you about what you're seeing?
So look, there is stuff that is genuinely anti-Semitic. I mean, if someone writes a swastika, if someone says, you, because you're a Jewish person, we're going to hold you responsible for what Israel does, right? Or a whole series of other things. That's anti-Semitism. The challenge comes that actually when there's actually a big debate among Jews about what qualifies as anti-Semitism and does it. In this way, I think it's not exactly the same. I don't think there's kind of an equivalent debate among Black people about what racism is or LGBT people. And the reason there's this debate is because there's a debate among Jews about how we think about Israel, right? And so there's a group of people, the Anti-Defamation League, who basically say, if you delegitimize Israel, which means that you question its validity as a Jewish state, that's anti-Semitic, right? So anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, as the Anti-Defamation League likes to say a lot these days, right? And there are Jewish kids, and then from that perspective, there are a whole bunch of things that you might hear people say: apartheid, settler colonialism, all these things. And what you hear is like, that person doesn't want Israel to exist as a Jewish state, and if they don't want Israel to exist, they probably want to kill Jews, or they don't, And so there are plenty of Jewish students who have that perspective. And for them, these things are really threatening. But there's another group of Jewish students, right, who have a very different perspective, right? Because oftentimes in these protests and in these Palestinian solidarity movements, there are also Jewish kids too. Sometimes Jewish kids have been in the forefront of this. One of the groups that Columbia suspended, along with Students for Justice Palestine, was Jewish Voice for Peace, right? So there is a little bit, and the organized Jewish community kind of doesn't like to quite admit it, but there's a little bit of a civil war in terms of, like, not a violent civil war, but like an intellectual civil war, especially among younger Jews. Among older Jews, there's more of a consensus, but younger Jews are really divided around this. And so I think what universities need to do, and we have competing definitions of anti-Semitism, that one of them says anti-Zionism is kind of anti-Semitism, the other one says not necessarily. Universities need to have an open discussion and teach about this, right? And teach and talk about the history of anti-Semitism, talk about the history of Israel, and talk about Palestinian history, talk about the history of Palestinian nationalism. How have Palestinians talked about Zionism, talked about Jews? And that's what a university should be doing, And I fear that what's happening is oftentimes, because these presidents are under a lot of pressure, the pressure is for them to just shut stuff down, right? Yeah. And it drives me crazy that the people who are telling them to shut stuff down are the same people who've been telling us that they're the world's greatest opponents of cancel culture and the world's greatest proponents of free speech, and don't be snowflakes, and it's good to have your feelings hurt. Well, like, I agree with them. Like, I actually wrote defending the right of Charles Murray to speak at Middlebury and saying people shouldn't have. I supported Milo, that lunatic guy's right to speak. I believe in that. Like, invite Donald Trump to speak. Like, you should be able to do that. But then you also have to let Palestinians and their supporters speak too. Obviously, if they're threatening an individual person, that's different. But if they're just making a statement that you personally find really threatening, there are a lot of people who find the Young Republicans Club in the age of Donald Trump really threatening. I don't want to ban them.